Recently, I interviewed a coach who's been coaching on the ATP Tour for almost 30 years. He said there was one match that stood out in his mind as one of the greatest examples of changing your tactics in all of tennis. So today we break down the US Open Finals in 1987 and 1988. What's up team? Coach Joshua here, TennisTactics.com, and we are headed back in time to 1987. Ivan Lendl was crushing it as the world number 1 and Mats Wilander was the world number 6, but they met up in the US Open Finals. They were both known as great baseline players, and that year Lendl would beat Wilander in 4 sets. Well, in the next year they got a rematch, and this time Wilander turned the tide and won the match in an epic 5-setter. This also helped him finish the year as world number 1. But what if I told you Mats Wilander's big win didn't come from improving his technique? According to ATP coach Claudio Pistolessi, who was also playing against these guys at the time, this win was all about a change in tactics. So today we're taking a look at how he did it and what it means for your game. But first, do me a favor and subscribe to my channel so I can bring you more tennis tactics. Alright, so Wilander and Lendl were both baseliners, and when I say they were great baseliners, look at this clip. These guys were solid from the backcourt, and Lendl seemed to have a little bit of the edge. I mean, look at this commitment to high margin cross-court shots. I wish we saw more of this in amateur tennis these days. But whatever. So Mats determined he had to make some adjustments to his game, and the big change he made was to come to net more often. Let's look at the numbers. When we talk about coming to net, in 1987 the matchup looked like this, and in 1988 their matchup looked a little bit different. Notice the drastic shift in Wilander's numbers and the remarkable consistency in Lendl's. Lendl stayed his same steady self. Wilander was changing things up. Clearly, Wilander hit more volleys. But that's not the whole story. An easy to misinterpret stat is what's happening to the number of volleys that were point ending. Notice the percent went down from 1987 to 1988. But this isn't because he was playing worse from the net. This tells us that in the 1987 match, Wilander was coming forward only on really short ball opportunities, where it was clear that he should come to the net or he had to come to the net. Naturally, these should have been easier putaways, so he was more likely to finish the point on that volley. But the next year, he began pressing forward more frequently, on purpose. He was hitting more transition volleys and setup volleys. You could say he was intentionally getting to the net by choice, not just when Lendl hit a ball so short he had to come in. See, this is important. The word short is totally relative. To John Isner, I'm short, standing at 6 feet tall. But at the same height, to Diego Schwartzman, I'm tall. Tall, short, it's all about perspective. The same goes for deep balls and short balls. It's all about the player's perspective on when they can come in and what they can attack. For one player, they may say that when their opponent's ball lands in front of the service line, they can come in and attack that ball and hit a transition shot. Another player might not be comfortable coming forward for an approach until they see their opponent's ball land about halfway up inside the service box. In 1988, Wilander redefined what kind of ball he saw as an opportunity. Because of that, he started seeing more and more opportunities to come to the net and put pressure on Lendl. He wasn't going for a winner, he was applying pressure. This alone can have a big impact on a matchup. If you're trying to beat a fellow baseliner, consider throwing in more approaches to the net. See how they handle it. But notice, Wilander made this adjustment over the course of a year, not a week. Changing your tactics might require you to get out of your comfort zone and start hitting some more volleys. But once you can execute, it'll be well worth it to switch up your tactics and surprise your opponents. So let's talk about how you might use setup volleys and finishing volleys. When we see the number of volleys hit going up, but the percentage of volleys hit that win points going down, and the total number of points won going up, well, we can just tell that he's hitting more than one volley in the point. And sometimes that's what it takes. It's not about hitting one great shot, but a combination of shots. If you're looking to improve your transition game, let's start with some rules that look like this. If you find yourself a few feet to halfway inside the service box and the ball is above your shoulders, a great play is to go for a finishing volley. Aim it cross court, a little shorter angle. And this is that strong, firm volley that pulls the opponent off the court. They might not even touch it. If you're catching the ball any lower, or if you're not that far into the service box, you may need to play what's called a setup volley. This setup volley is the volley you hit before you hit the finishing volley to give you more time to get closer to the net and into that position. The setup volley is going to be hit with a little more slice, a little more open strings, a little more touch, and you should usually aim it straight ahead of you. Keep it low and your opponent will have to hit up on the ball, so their shot will be high. And if you play it up the line, their highest percentage shot is going to be cross court, so you just move to cover the middle of the court and put it away. You can even bank a little bit towards the center of the court to cover that cross court pass, tempting them to go for the lower percentage down the line. Just be ready to jump that way if they decide to pull the trigger. If they do go cross, you have two options. One is a short cross court angle, wrong footing your opponent. As they run this way, you hit that way. Option 2 is a down the line volley to the open court. Keep it deep and make them run. However, the best thing you can hope for is that their ball comes a little bit to the inside of you. It's nice and high and you can take a strong, firm volley, cross-court shot to the open court. Now, if they do go line, your highest percentage option is to go cross-court and play it deep. Going deep is going to give you much more court to hit into and therefore is a much safer shot than trying to hit that short angle, especially if you're having to jump over and cover the line. The short angle is definitely more aggressive, but is also a lot smaller space to hit into, so you can often end up losing that point for no reason. So if you're looking to improve your transition game, go out, play a match, and follow these 2 rules. Maybe even record yourself on Swing Vision and send it in to me for a tactical analysis. But before you go crazy, does the 1988 final mean that we should all turn in our baseline games and swap them out for some net play? Well, not necessarily. Here's what ATP coach Claudio Pistolessi had to say about when to change your tactics and when to stick to your guns.
Well, of course, the only answer possible here is depends, because it depends who you are coaching. So, what are the tools that are in possess of your player, the player that you are coaching? What is the opponent pattern and information you have about the opponent? You don't have to jump in the trap of to be too dependent on the opponent. I think 80% you still stick with your identity. You want to bring your game regardless of the opponent, especially obviously when you serve. The serve is 100% on you. That's my speech with my players. And 20-25%, you have to know information about the opponent. If they don't like, if you serve a volley to their backhand, you're going to do a little bit more of that. If they are very tall, long legs, long arm, you serve more to the body, so they're more tough to turn. They're slower to turn. If they have the tendency to be very much behind the baseline, you can take the chance and play some drop shot. But it's all theory, So I think there is no one. My favorite strategy. My favorite is the one who fit the best for this situation, and so I can tell you stories about that. Also, there is a third way, because normally a strategy, if it works, of course you keep going. If you don't, using the tactics, you try to change. But the third way could also be that you bring into the plate, into the match, your identity, and it doesn't work. You don't necessarily need to change anything, but just doing what you're supposed to do, but better. Putting more first serve in, stay lower on your legs, less distracted. So you don't change anything on what you plan in the strategy, but you have to deliver in a higher level the same strategy. So this is the third way, So not necessarily you have to change with the tactics, but you see if you are delivering at the level of intensity that you're supposed to do to win this match.
And that is really good advice. It's best to know what kind of player you are and play to your strengths. That's your best chance of winning matches. Generally, if you're in a match, use your strengths to win. But when you're on the practice court, that could be a great time to develop some new tools that you can use to surprise your opponents later. If you want even more tennis tactics, I'll be dropping a ton of free content here on YouTube. So go ahead, like this video, subscribe to my channel, maybe ring the bell. I'll be dropping videos on my entire tactics library over the next few weeks, and you don't want to miss it. And if you want even more tennis tactics, head on over to my website, tennistactics.com, to stay in touch. Until then, hit your targets. We'll talk soon.